Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode one of this season two, Elevated Conversations about Health and Healing. And we are starting the season with a bang. I met sweet Chelsea at Eco this past year. She was the first other speaker face I met and saw as we were looking for where do we go for this for this speaker um like orientation. And oh my gosh, I had no idea what a gift she is. And so I'm so excited to introduce Chelsea to you guys. And we are going to be talking today about breast implant illness. This is something that in my 8, almost 9 years of experience, I've seen more than a handful of times. This is something that impacts women to the deepest and most intimate level, depending on why they pursued those implants in the first place. And so I think one thing that really stood out to me hearing Chelsea talk is, there is a deep-rooted seed that needs to be healed for a lot of these women. And she didn't ignore that and she didn't gaslight that. And I think that that's such a gift. So, welcome, Chelsea, to Elevated Conversations about Health and Healing. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Thank you, Ellie. It's so good to be here. So I started off a seemingly healthy child. And then, as life had a journey for me, I went on that healing journey from a very young age. And I was pretty sick in the beginning. And then I ended up at the age of 18 getting breast implants, which within 5 years really started compounding my health effects.
Mm.
And mostly hormone issues, digestive issues. And I learned a lot about detox from an early age. And I just started implementing that in my life. And I labeled myself as a detox junkie. And I thought that was kind of like a badge of honor that I wore for many years. And the great news is that I reversed every single disease process that I ever had. And I lived that way for about 15 years. And that was until I didn't. And that was when I realized that my breast implants could be the cause of a lot of things I was experiencing. It was a colleague who said to me one day, Chelsea, I think your breast implants could be the problem. That could be what's making you sick. And I was like, it's not that. I think maybe it's perimenopause. Maybe I'm missing something. But my symptoms were just very minimal. I had hair loss. I had seborrheic dermatitis, was just kind of like rash, scaly patches on your scalp. I had a little bit of skin rashes and pretty debilitating anxiety and depression. And I thought, maybe I'll just do another gut healing protocol. Love Cellcore, kind of diving into that. Did like rounds and rounds of that year after year. And it took me finally 2 years before I realized that my breast implants were going to have to go. And I remember the day I was on a hike and I was just kind of standing there looking over this beautiful waterfall. And it just hit me in my spirit. And I knew that this was a part of my future. This wasn't something I was going to have a choice about. If I wanted to get well, then I was going to have to remove my implants. And I think at that moment, you go through a lot of things. You're like, okay, I don't want to have surgery. The surgery is so easy when you get your implants. You're like, oh, I'm so excited. This brand new thing. I'm just going to be so confident in my body and I'm just going to love this. And then you enter into that next season where you're getting them removed and nobody wants their implants removed.
Yeah.
So then you go through the emotional pieces and the trauma and you really prepare yourself to remove the implants until they're removed. And then you have to figure out what life is, who you are at your core. And so it's just this really intense journey that I was able to go on and really kind of guided myself through that and realized that there were so many other women out there going through this, dealing with body image issues that we're just trying to fix that, end up failing us, or just really dealing with health issues that they really can't resolve. And I feel like all of that just kind of created this beautiful marriage. And the day I got my implants out, I knew that I wanted to dedicate to women going through the same process.
I love that.
Since then, I've partnered with a plastic surgeon. And now I'm kind of helping to guide a lot of these women through the same process. We see hundreds of women explant every single year, and it's just so beautiful to be a part of it.
What a gift that is. I love that you have found a plastic surgeon that's like-minded in terms of taking a more holistic approach to something like this, because it can seem very like East meets West in terms of the approach, but you literally do have to take that because you have something foreign in the body that was placed in there for likely a very emotional or psychological reason. And really diving to the root, it is an East meets West sort of approach when it comes to implants and explants for a lot of women. 18 is so young. Can you tell me a little bit about the background that led you to choose to get implants? Was it like, I'm getting these the day I turn 18, like my parents don't need to sign off, or was it a little more methodical than that? I would love to know.
I think it's probably looking for the next best thing. I have the mindset that I have to have the best of the best. And it's
Mm,
just like I will work myself until I am, at the top of my game personally. It's no competition with any other person. It's really just with myself. I just want to be the best that I can be at everything that I do. And
yeah,
it really like hit me in my physical appearance when I was younger.
yeah,
And I would see these little 17 magazines and you see the Barbie image and all the things. And you're like, oh, well, why can't I have that?
yeah.
If that's what we should really be striving for, then why don't I have that? And why can't I just do it?
Gosh,
So,
that is so true. I mean, as
yeah,
one very self-driven person, hearing that, it's like you just see what somebody else has that has made them successful, and
yeah,
it's a motivator. It's like I can do that, and if I can't, I can find a way to make it happen. Like if so I can. So that
yeah,
is really a trauma response.
it
Right?
is.
Like of our perfectionist high drive, it's like I'm gonna succeed. I'm gonna find a way to succeed at
Yeah,
this and to do it.
yeah,
So that hits home for me. I really resonate with that for sure.
yeah.
So as you partnered with this plastic surgeon, I would love to know more about how your journey has crafted, how you help other people on their journey, and what that looks like for women, especially when they reach that like critical point of my breast implants are likely making me unwell.
So I feel like there's just so many different pieces that go into it. When we think about the process, we're going through this surgical experience. We're also going through this emotional experience, and we're going through detox. And you may
Mhm.
have people that are even listening right now who say, "Oh, I've explanted, but I just don't feel my best." And I think that
Yeah.
when we look at the whole picture, that's really where we kind of we fine tune and we improve our health and we can actually optimize. So when we have women coming in, a lot of these women have been in the functional medicine space for a long time. We have very, very well studied women. They are at the top of their game. These women are
Mhm.
athletes. They are very, very studied. They've been working with functional medicine providers for years, and some of them kind of feel the implants were a part of the issue. Some had no clue. I mean, I had no clue.
Mm.
I worked with
Mhm.
women with implants and
Yeah.
never thought to tell them, hey, you might want to consider your implants.
Mm.
And so that's really a piece of that process, is helping women to see and determine that the implants are even a part of that journey for them, and just kind of guiding them through that surgical process. So that's a part of the piece of the puzzle that we really do as well. When Dr. Whitfield started studying functional medicine, he knew what he wanted, but he didn't have the pieces in place to be able to
Mhm.
do that. And I feel like it was such a gift for me to have that background when I came into Dr. Whitfield's practice, and to be able to start having those conversations with him and saying, okay, like this is the gap. This is the beautiful marriage that I think both of us have been looking for. And I think that in my mind, just trained as a medical professional in my background, I was like, I'm a nurse and I want to see the world of functional medicine collide with this world of traditional medicine. I always had that vision. So
Yeah.
when I saw Dr. Whitfield and the need, we both had a need for one another, really. So that's what allowed us to create, such a beautiful program. And I think just the pieces that I had personally gone through emotionally, the eating disorders, even from a child, we can go back
Mhm.
to like all those moments where I was just
100%.
really focused on trying to be the best me that I possibly could. Like all of those pieces came in, and they're a part of what we do as well. And even bringing in people that are working on more of the emotional pieces, we've added those pieces to our team. And then we're also, we've added kind of like that functional piece as well. It's like I think that what we don't realize when someone has implants or they have this really big inflammatory piece, and this can be dental implants, breast implants, butt implants, it doesn't really matter what you have. When you have something foreign in your body, it's creating this place where inflammation can kind of set up, and the body's really resisting whatever that is. And it sees it as this invader. So you have an inflammatory response, you have an immune response, and all of those things we attempt to address those before the implants are removed. And
Mm-hmm.
then we get a little bit better. Like for my story, I was pretty well for about 15 years until I wasn't. And
Mm-hmm.
then something happened in my health and it created a downward spiral where I just got sick and I couldn't get well.
Mm.
And I think that happens for so many women. And when we remove the implants, which is the culprit here, then we actually give the body the opportunity to heal. So when we start working on the nervous system to regulate, when we start working on inflammation to help improve that, when we start working on pathogens, I mean, I had parasites as a part of my story, could never get a hold of the parasites
Mm.
completely until I ended up removing the implants. And then it was like ease. It's like my body wanted to release those things. So I don't know if I
Do you
fully
think
answered.
that those implants just create, in my mind, the way I see it as a clinician who likes to look at the whole body, right? It's like this foreign object is creating this just divide within the body. It's not a natural stressor like a parasite, although they are very annoying, right? They are natural in nature versus like a silicone or a saline insert into the body. It's like I want to try to get rid of this, but I can't. And the my owner, my home wants it to be there. So I think it just creates this natural divide in the body's energy of where am I outputting to help myself heal? And when you divide that energy long enough, the body just ends up being exhausted. It's like, I can't figure this out anymore, and I really don't want to try. I think that's why so many women can live so long with just these mild like symptoms before, like you mentioned, it just, there's one thing, whether it's a trip, a parasitic infection, some sort of autoimmune type trigger that all of a sudden the body's like, I give up. I can't keep doing this anymore.
Yeah.
What are some of the symptoms that you see most commonly when women come in that maybe are unexpected when it comes to BII, where they are like, I've been dealing with XYZ, and you're like, oh, yeah, that could be your implants?
Yeah. So I'll kind of combine that with just touching on a piece that you really brought up, and I feel like it's so important. One of the things that we see with that, the body is really attempting to separate itself from the implant, and it's
Mm.
creating a calcium shell around that implant. So many times we'll remove the implant, of course, and there's always like the scar tissue that it builds around, but very often we find very hard calcium, like very just like it's crusty. Like if you were to run your scalpel across it, you hear it. Like if I were going to run it across concrete, I mean, it sounds
Ugh.
like that. So that's what the body's doing to protect you. Now, I can tell you
Mm.
my personal experience. I went to a Silkor Eco conference about 5 weeks after my initial explant, and I'm telling you the difference in. You spoke about the energy, the difference in the energy I felt from like a heart standpoint, heart to heart, human to human standpoint.
Yeah.
I felt it. It was absolutely amazing. I was like, I feel like I can just connect with people so much easier. And I had not
Mm.
felt that in years.
Yeah.
And I even had a friend who used to tell me, she was like, Chelsea, you have a wall. Like
Mm.
I can get close to you, but there's something I just can't get like completely close to you. I can't, there's something that you're not sharing. There's something you're not opening up. And I used to say, I have no idea what that is. Like, why would she feel that way? I felt very open with her.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment when I realized it was more of an energetic thing than anything else, because we're blocking our heart with 2 pounds
Yeah.
of, silicone, saline, whatever that is. So it's the energy that we're blocking. So one, that is a really big piece. That is some of the things that women begin to notice from a symptom standpoint, is just the emotional energy. The other
Yeah.
thing is, hair loss. That was one of my biggest symptoms. Hair loss is very common in our women. Nervous system dysregulation. I notice, like, it's so interesting when I meet a woman for the very first time and I meet her before she explants, and I start working with these women about 3 months prior to explant, have the initial conversation, and we get on the phone, and you can feel the dysregulation in the nervous
Mm.
system. They're just really stressed. They're, and it's not stressed about the surgery, it's stressed about life. It's
Yes.
stressed about work and finances and kids, and there's too much to do. And it's almost overwhelming. They honestly just are having a hard time handling life's stressors. And I
Yes.
remember being like that to the point that I physically could not work out for a long time before I explanted. And I would try to lift weights, and I was like, my body is just telling me no. Like my heart I would just have palpitations, or I would just feel really dizzy upon standing. And I was like, okay, I can't work out. So I would just go in the gym and do some stretching. I might get on a rebounder. I might go for a walk. All of those things, you just feel like exhaustion sometimes, and you just physically don't have the energy. Chronic fatigue is another huge thing. Insomnia. So these women are not sleeping. The really interesting thing too is that the hormones start to tank. So if you look at a hormone panel, you can usually see with these women that their hormones are just pretty depleted. Very interesting. We get implants for this physical appearance, and then our testosterone plummets, so we don't have a sex drive. So it's like, well, what good are the implants for my spouse if I don't even have a sex drive?
You
So
can look, but you can't touch. Like, nope, nope.
yeah, totally. Skin rashes are very common. So a lot of times, for skin rashes, you may not have them all the time, but we have to think about our skin. It is another detox organ. So when we're sweating and we're releasing these toxins through the skin, especially around the breast, the belly, the back area. A lot of women will get rashes, armpits,
Oh,
and it's
interesting.
usually after sauna, after they're exercising and sweating a lot. In the summertime, they may be worse. If they're wearing bras and they're, just below the bra line, those types of things, rashes, brain fog. Some women are just so foggy. They have to write down every little thing, or, they're not going to remember, like, they're kind of have to live by the calendar type of thing,
Yeah, yeah.
you know,
Chronic
and
fog.
you think like maybe these feel like perimenopause joint pain. It's like you feel like, okay, am I in perimenopause? So many of our women come and they're in their 40s and 50s, and they're like, I don't know if it's my hormones. And I'm like, probably both.
Yeah,
you know?
seriously. Well, one
Yeah.
exacerbates the next. I think that
Yeah.
that's the benefit of working and being in close relation to Cellcore is, they have great detox products, but they also never ignore the nervous system and the body as a whole. And I think that as a clinician, that's the approach that a lot of us functional clinicians take to our clients is it could be one, it could be the other. It's probably both. It's probably and, not or, when it comes to how the body is trying to heal. Because even though we have these specializations that we're niching down in, God designed the body as a whole to operate as a whole all the time. And so you can't isolate one thing and expect it to just cure the problem. You have to look at the whole human. You have to look at the whole individual, which is why I love your guys' approach to this. You're not just explanting, you're explanting and detoxing and looking at the emotional components of it, because all of those things play into, the why the woman made this decision in the first place. Now, obviously, you're not a psychologist, right? But recognizing the emotional connection in these things so that women feel validated where they're at and feel emotional. Like, I know it's the right thing to do to get these out, but that doesn't mean psychologically and emotionally you're not going to struggle with it, and you're not going to not feel like yourself after you do it. You have to re-find yourself after that, because these implants have likely been a source of not necessarily fixation, but you ponder getting them in and then you have to ponder getting them removed. It's not this like one and done. It is what it is. So, what are some of the tips that you like to give women, both for physically and emotionally and psychologically processing the detox process as well as the emotional detox process?
So you're probably prepared when you go into surgery and you say, I'm ready for this. I made the decision. I'm ready to get them out. And you don't know what to expect because that's not shared online. Nobody's posting their immediately after surgery pictures. Nobody's telling their immediately after surgery stories. You see
Mm.
these women 6 months later when everything has settled out, the dust has settled. You're seeing before and afters 6 months later, a year later, you're seeing before and afters after some revision.
Yeah.
And what we have to realize is that the day after surgery, 2 weeks after surgery, even 1 month after surgery can be really rough,
Mm.
not only from an emotional standpoint, but from a physical standpoint. Emotionally, you've prepared. And the first time you take that bandage off, it is horrifying.
Mm.
I will say that because not many people are.
Mm.
And it is a very scary thing to experience because your breasts look kind of flat like a pancake. I am a
Yeah.
very small chested woman. I have very little breast tissue, a cup, like very small. And women like that are very flat when the implants come out.
Mm.
What happens is the tissue has been compressed for so long. It's like a slow acting memory foam. It's like, think about your Tempur-Pedic mattress, but
Yes.
kind of just stays in. That's
Yeah.
what your tissue is doing for a little while. So you have to wait until that tissue begins to fluff back up.
Mm.
And it's just not, your breasts don't look like breasts. They just look like skin, for some women. And some women have more breast tissue, and they're usually going to have a little bit better experience with it because there's something there that, is available, to even
Workable.
look like breasts. Yeah, workable. Yeah. So the great news is, though, you're in a wrap for about, a couple weeks after surgery, like an ACE bandage, just to kind of prevent fluid from
Yeah.
building up and things like that. So you're covered most of the time. The breasts are protected. And I think that every day when you pull that wrap off to get a shower, it's a different experience.
Mm.
It's like, I'm okay today. I did this. I made a great decision. I'm feeling better. You're starting to see symptoms. People start to see their eyes are a little bit brighter, or their face is a little bit like less inflamed,
Mm.
or, they're just like, oh, I had this thing and now it's not there. So different things will, like the brain fog is so much better. So little things like that just remind you, okay, I'm really on the right path. Everything's going to be okay. And then you have that moment where you unwrap and you're like, what did I do? This is the worst decision I could have ever made in my life. I can't believe I did this. I have destroyed my body. I'm never going to be the
Mm.
same. I'm never going to be able to fix this. Why are my breasts so ugly? I have never seen anything like this, So you go through that and you just have your moment and you cry, and it's okay. Just cry, just
Yeah.
let yourself experience. So that's kind of the emotional pieces. And I encourage, patients to process with someone, whether that
Yeah.
be a counselor or a transformation coach or someone like that. I had a transformation coach going into my surgery, and then I carried her through for the first few months after surgery, and I just processed with her.
Yeah.
And she just kind of held that space for me and allowed me to just be who I was in that moment and really talk about, why did I get the implants in the first place? Who am I truly at my core, with the implants, without the implants? None of that matters. And I think by the end of the journey, from an emotional standpoint, most women are saying, this is the best decision I ever could have made for myself from an emotional standpoint. I am embracing my body, who I am as a person, more than I ever have in my life.
Mm.
So, and that's the emotions, and then you've got this physical piece over here as well. And I think at the end, the physical, even, you're definitely coming into your body and accepting who,
Yeah.
like, what your body looks like. And it's like, some women say, I like my little small breasts,
Yeah.
I feel that way too sometimes. I'm like, I think those implants were kind of in the way.
Yeah. I
So
think that's so beautiful. I think you're right though. Like so much of how we perceive ourselves, actually, it mostly starts with our mother, right? How does our mother talk about herself and her body? And
mhm.
for as someone who grew up looking identical to my mom and having my mom have a lot of body image issues, a lot of that impacted me and my perception of myself and my perception of my body and the flaws in my body because it was the flaws that she had in her body. So we're processing these flaws from a very young age, but we're not able or maybe emotionally thinking about the bigger picture of how our perception of ourselves impacts the way we carry ourselves, impacts our confidence, dissecting those things that comes with time, but the seed has already been planted. So making those decisions to change our body at a young age because that of the perceived flaw is another emotional level in and of itself. But to work through the psychological piece, I truly believe helps you embrace the physical piece of how your body was created. And honestly, when I look at my mom, I think she's the most beautiful person in the world, but I don't see that in myself because the seeds have been planted. I've worked through a lot of that because of, learning about trauma and trauma feedback loops and the way the brain works. And I think that opening and embracing that through this process for women is really critical because you can do it for your health, but you also have to do it mostly for yourself and for like the little 8-year-old you who wanted the implants in the first place. Obviously, it might not have started at 8, but there's always a reason why we make these decisions. And so processing what led to the decision in the first place and then stepping into how it's impacted your health and genuinely just caring about your body because just like you said, so many of these women are in the functional space for a long time because they're seeking out answers for their health before they're able to realize the breast implants could be an issue. And I always have a huge, like, for me, it's a prayerful moment before bringing up to clients, do you think your implants could be an issue? Because so often it's a knee-jerk no. Like, there's no way. Okay, I'm going to plant that seed and then I'm going to move on and keep doing what I'm doing. But you always end up getting back to that roadblock of there is something keeping you from healing. And I always say there are 3 things that keep people from healing. I guess 4, but it's mold in the home, it's oral dysbiosis that's causing issues within the body. I think you could lump breast implants in that same one. Like there's something within your body, a chronic infection that's keeping you from healing, and then nervous system dysregulation. And just backpedaling a little bit to what you said about, your heart space and feeling open to what the experience of life should be or having that wall up. I think there's something to be said about the fascia network, especially for women around our reproductive organs and around our heart and our breast tissue. We have more concentrated fascia within those areas than our male counterparts because of the intimacy of those areas within our body. And so, truly, the calcium that is formed, the calcium shell around the implants, fascia and rigid fascia generates calcium shells as well and just creates that rigidity and can prevent us from being more connected with either our reproductive organs if we feel like they're failing us or our breast area if we feel like it's been an area of vulnerability for us. Our body will protect us. That fight or flight mode will protect us. And so it's amazing how removing something that shouldn't have been there in the first place and then taking time to emotionally heal and do some of the fascia work along with it can create space for nerves to be able to have energy flow through them again and to operate the way that God intended them to operate. And so hearing you say that from someone who's experienced it as a clinician who's seen it in multiple women, it's so true. You're so right. You become closed off and you don't even realize that it's unintentionally closed off, right? It's not on purpose, but it is this literal physical barrier to keep you from experiencing life and people and yourself to the fullest.
Yeah, it really is. It's almost scary, and I
Mm,
think about how it impacts just what you're saying impacted me probably in my female organs. Never thought about it.
mm,
Always had health issues when it come to hormones from the time I was a child. And I'm I'm going through perimenopause, and I'm 44 and I messaged my mom and I'm like, "Hey mom, tell me a little bit about your perimenopause experience. Like, what was life like? Should I be going through this right now?" She's like, "Chelsea, I did not go through this until my 50s. Your nana
mm.
was the same way. Like, this is way too early. What is happening?" And I think about it and I'm like, I just couldn't make the connection. And I think I started thinking about the implants and that journey and just how a wreck my cycles were and all those things, just having to go through all of this, significant hormone work.
Yeah,
And now I look back and I'm like, what did the implants do that I don't even know about today? And
yeah,
I'll never know, you
yeah.
know?
It is.
So,
So it's a hard pill to swallow for some clients too, to have to make peace with that of, I've had these for X amount of years. First, I've had some women who have had them for like 25 years, which is just crazy to me. And when they get them out, it's just literal rediscovery of, okay, I want to be well. And that takes time too, depending on how long they've had their implants in that I've seen clinically. I would love to know if you notice a correlation, and this is not always right, but between the amount of time people have had implants or the type of implants maybe, and when they start to see symptom improvement. Would you say there is a timeline you give your patients for that?
I feel like if there's a rupture, especially silicone, it's a long journey. It's
Mm.
a very long journey. That silicone can leach into the body if
Oh,
it's like a honey. It becomes like honey. And these companies are saying that the silicone doesn't leak or anything, but you can look videos up. And if people are grabbing the silicone and they're pulling it from like warm silicone that's been in your body, and these surgeons are pulling it from the table, you could probably even look some of Dr. Whitfield's videos. It is like a sticky mess. And if there's been a rupture and it leaches through that calcium, um,
shell.
scar tissue, the shell, then it does cause, leaching into the system. We have patients who call us all the time who say, hey, I think I still have silicone in my body. I
Oh,
have had scans and I'm showing like little tiny masses. And so it's very scary. That is probably the longest healing process. And Dr. Whitfield has had to go in and remove silicone, from the
oh,
tissue, those types of things. The others are, the saline are, if they rupture, they're not as bad because it is saline as long as there wasn't mold or anything like that in them. Most of those patients are not as sick. And I feel like a lot of it is just the journey of the person. Like, is this person, semi healthy, or do they have just a natural standard American diet and all those
yeah.
things? They really play a role as well. You can even see that in the capsule. So when Dr. Whitfield removes the capsule, sometimes it'll just be really, really thin. And I think that I see a difference in those when someone has been detoxing for a long time and just really kind of taking care of their body, and versus someone who hasn't. And my implants were 23 years old and the capsule was very thin, but I'd been
Mm.
working on myself for a very long
Hmm.
time, So I don't know that there is a rhyme or reason. Honestly, sometimes I think it's just, like, why don't I have an autoimmune condition and someone else does?
Yeah, totally
It's
genetic
just,
driven.
yeah,
I want
totally.
to talk about two things you touched on because these are two huge factors that we see people unwell in our office often, and that is scar tissue and that is mold. So, would you say every single implant has potential or does develop scar tissue around it? Is that the goal of it? And scar tissue can create such a barrier to healing. It creates nervous system dysregulation, nerve deflection, nerve pain, nerve damage, residual nerve pain, inability to communicate. So again, that could be a huge deterrent for libido as well. That is horrible to me. That's horrifying. So every single implant develops scar tissue. Yuck. When
It
you
is.
remove the implant, does the scar tissue go away?
No, and this is a very, very big controversial topic in our space because some doctors are going to tell you we can remove the implant and life goes on as normal. And that is not the case.
Mm.
Imagine that nasty honey silicone implant that I just told you about. And a doctor goes in and they go to open this patient up. What do they do with that honey mess that spilled all into the capsule?
Oh,
So there's no way to really clean it up. And the best way is Dr. Whitfield is a surgeon, and that's really why I like him. He's worked in cancer, he really specialized in that for a very long time. And so he's very great and meticulous about removing the capsule. And he tries to remove it intact, and that will keep all of the contents inside that shell. So it's really important because, those capsules also have biofilm. They have, we found up to like 29%. Some studies have found even higher than that, where there is types of bacteria that are on the capsule.
oh
So
my gosh.
Bacterium and staph, those are the two most common. And so my breast capsules had both of those. Now that really plays a role as well. You asked about healing and how long it takes someone to heal. That really plays a role into how long it takes someone to heal, I feel. Now we do put a wash in the pockets. We use a pH balancing solution. So all of that is technically gone when we close a patient up, but it still does play a role in, I think, how sick a person truly is.
100%. So horrifying, so good to know. And the biofilms and mold, let's touch on that. But also, I really want to know, as well as probably all the listeners, when it comes to explantation, not all surgeons are created equal. So you talked about removing the shell intact. You talked about the way Dr. Whitfield operates. He, for those of you listening, also spoke at Eco. What a badass. He just like doesn't seem to give a shit about anything. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that so much. He's like, I'm gonna get you well. I don't care what you think or want. This is my goal. Obviously, he cares, right? He
Yeah.
cares about his
Right.
patients an exceptional amount, but he knows what he's doing. And I think that kind of confidence in a surgeon is what people need to look for. But let's talk about the mold, the biofilms, and then how he explants and why that matters.
We test all of our patients for mold, and we look at
Good.
environmental toxins, mycotoxins. We look to make sure that a patient is really ready for surgery. We do a battery of tests before surgery, and this is really one of the areas that we focus on. And what we find is that if someone is being exposed to a lot of mold or they're living in mold, it is going to cause a problem for their healing. Just like
Mm,
if you were working with someone, Ellie, and they're living in mold, it is almost impossible for the body to heal. Now you add a
100%.
surgery into that. Some of these women want a fat transfer, which is where we do liposuction in another area of the body. We inject that fat into the breast just so that there's a little bit more tissue there. So these women are a little bit like, emotionally stable after surgery, if that's what they are looking for. And if you have mold and you're living in mold, it is almost impossible for your body to heal. And
Mm,
what we find is that a lot of the symptoms that they were having with breast implants, they are still having the exact same symptoms because there's still that inflammation going on. There's still that inflammatory response. They may put the water filter in, they may put the air filter in, but it's not going to be enough if there's, stachybotrys in their walls. So
yeah.
we do kind of take them through that process to make sure that there's not mold that they're living in. If we find mold on a test, we'll ask them to test their home. And there's, several different ways that we could do that and even start that cleanup process. Sometimes that will cause us to postpone a surgery. And it's really in the best interest of the patient at that point, And some of these patients are super sick and they're battling the surgery timeline because, now they've got to clean up mold. Now they have to, explant. And I don't say this to scare anyone. It is not, I just want you to see the reality of some of these things and how they can make you sick. If you're living in mold and you have implants, then there's two different things that are really coming against you. And that could be the reason why you're so sick.
Yeah.
And then the biofilm, it's just a part of the biofilm is like a sticky substance that these pathogens secrete, and they do that to wall off and protect themselves. It's a defense mechanism. And, we both use Cellcore in practice. So we know that we use things to help break down the biofilm so that we can
Hmm.
target these pathogens a little bit more efficiently. And that really is a part of our protocol. So the
Yeah.
biofilm is something that Dr. Whitfield does talk about a lot as well.
That's amazing. I think it's really important though, because if someone's going at this with removing this foreign object from my body is going to alleviate all my symptoms, but they are living in mold and that's something you find out after. It's such a psychological trip. It's like, okay, if I'm going to remove this, I'm going to get better. It's like we have two factors at play, and it'll be worth it to handle both of them for your health, but to be transparent about the timing, I think is so important because psychologically and financially, it's an investment for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
Mhm.
So, how does Dr. Whitfield approach explantation versus maybe a non-trained plastic surgeon who's like, yeah, I'll just take out your implants? Because I do think where someone goes is really important.
He really looks at it as, doing the best thing for a patient's health. And that is really his end goal. At the end of the day, he wants them to be healthy. We have a wellness clinic. I mean, that is what we do here. And, we're not doing all the body sculpting and all the things. We have that available, yes, but our priority is really wellness. And that is his number one priority. When he has a conversation with someone and you're having a consult, he's listening. Is there a potential for mold? Is there a potential for something else standing in the way? And he's really going to advise, we would like to run this lab on you or that lab on you. This is what it sounds like you're experiencing. Where do you live in the world? Are you exposed to a lot of chemicals? Sounds like you might live on a golf course. Are you exposed to,
Ugh. The
are you
golf
exposed to a
course.
lot of herbicides, pesticides? Yeah. It's like we are
So
just,
bad.
we hate when we hear about patients living on a golf course, or if they live like in the country and there's like they're living next to farms and they're spraying all these chemicals. There is a lot of exposure there to toxins. And we've had people whose husband worked in the industry where they're literally spraying these toxins. So
Mm,
we have to pay attention to those types of things during the conversation, because
yeah.
those toxins tests become very important at that point. And that's really his priority, is what do we need to make sure we have in place before this surgery takes place? And he's usually booked out a little bit anyway, but he will try to book them out a little bit further if we know that we need to do some testing first.
Yeah. Walk me through. I'm a patient. I come in. I think I need an explant. What does that look like? And also let us know what your guys' clinic is called and where you guys are located. So if people
Yeah.
want to find you, they can.
Yeah. So we're Aloe Skin and Body, and we're in Austin, Texas. And
Woohoo.
so,
Yeehaw.
yes, if you are a patient and you're coming in and you're just doing your consult with Dr. Whitfield, that can be virtual, that can be in office.
Oh,
And it's
nice.
really, you're going to present your pictures, you're going to present an intake form. We do all that. We collect your information and just kind of look at that and review that before you come in. And we kind of have an idea about what we are interested in asking you based on that. And Dr. Whitfield in that consult is going to help you determine. He's never going to tell you that you need surgery. He
Mm-hmm.
is just going to be that open ear to listen and let you make the best decision for yourself. And so he gives insight into whether or not he thinks you may benefit from just a removal, or if you are going to benefit from a fat transfer or a lift. And every person is unique in what their goals are from an aesthetic standpoint. Some people are just super sick and they want to get well. You can do all of that at the time of your initial surgery. We typically recommend, if you're going to do a lift, you do that at the time of surgery. And then if you want to do a fat transfer, you can do that with surgery or after. Fat transfers get a little bit tricky, especially if you're potentially living in mold or you have, some other chronic illness, because we want to make sure that your body is in a pretty healthy state, if possible, from a toxicity standpoint before doing a fat transfer. It's really just going to help your fat take a little bit more. So typically you're going to lose about 30% of that volume. The stem cells get really stressed out when you transfer fat, and some of the fat will die and not really take. So you're left with about 70% after that. But imagine if you have sick fat, you're not going to transfer as much as you would if it were a little bit healthier. So that's one of those
That's
decisions.
so
Mhm.
interesting. That's so
Yeah.
interesting that, and when you think about it, fat stores toxin. So that makes sense.
Mhm.
If it's like toxin overload, it's like, no thanks.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna hang out here. Let's kill this off, which is so smart of
Mhm.
the body.
Yeah. So, and we do detox a little bit before surgery as well, just to kind of help prep the body so that so he is able to harvest healthier fat when he's going into the procedure.
That makes
Yeah.
so much sense. So after that initial consultation, how do you determine what labs you want to run? What do you typically run? And how do you approach that with a patient who wants to explant?
So we do general blood work. It's typically, just hormones. We look at just a really robust lab panel. We also do stool testing. So most of our patients have digestive issues, whether
Hmm.
it's an actual infection or whether or not they just have, immune issues or just some gut lining issues. So we're just kind of looking at things ahead of time just to make sure there's not anything we need to support prior to surgery. And then we also use that test after surgery to determine, helping us with protocols and things like that. I mentioned the total toxins test, heavy metals, environmental toxins, mycotoxins. We know that implants are full of heavy metals. They're full of about 40 known toxins. So depending on the manufacturer, you do have things like even like formaldehyde, plastics, those things are in your implants as well.
All the
It
things
doesn't matter.
parasites love. All the
Yeah.
things
Oh,
parasites just
yeah.
love. Ugh.
Totally. Totally. So, and we see a lot of parasites. I would say in my experience in functional medicine, we have the highest parasite count that I've ever seen, like show up on testing,
Wow.
it's pretty interesting to make the connection. But I think about like the implant, it doesn't matter if it's a saline or a silicone implant. They all have a silicone shell. They all have these toxins in the shell. And these bugs love to use all of those toxins to make up their biofilm. So it just
100%.
strengthens them for living in the body. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I knew that there was toxins within the
Mhm.
breast implant, but as far as like 40 known toxins and then those heavy metals, I was unaware how high the threshold is of toxins within implants. And you can see why compounded that makes people sick or it makes the body hold on to infections because those pathogens, like you said, they're just strengthened. They can strengthen their biofilm, which is what keeps them within the body, naturally resist the body's protective mechanisms. That's terrifying. That is terrifying to me. And holy moly.
Mhm.
I could see why you need to run such robust panels to just really get a baseline, but also then to really help assess if someone is interested, how the body is healing over time. One thing I remember from Eco, if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like you guys said you didn't always have clients go through detox protocol, but when you started to see the significant difference in the health and recovery of the patients, that's when you started implementing walking everyone through this sort of protocol because it really is that critical to assess where are your toxins at and how are they improving over time. Is that correct?
Yeah, when Dr. Whitfield first started doing this, he had of course he had a different practitioner there, and their style was really to just interview the patient to see if they wanted to go through detox, and they gave it as an option.
Yes.
And when I came in, they had really just transitioned into causing, just driving everyone toward detox. It's really a part of our surgical package. It's like
Yeah.
you get functional appointments, you get your appointments with the nurses, you get your HBOT, your Flowpresso, you get, all of your treatments after surgery. I mean, that's just kind of a part of it. Like you just go through a detox. Now, if you choose not to do detox, that's fine. You have a box of supplements there that you'll never use, and that's okay. But we really encourage all of
Oh.
our patients to do that. And 99% of them complete detox.
I love that it's just included. Like
Yeah.
it's not an extra tack on, it's included in
Mhm.
the pricing because you know that's going to enhance their health outcomes and then the ball's in their court if they're going to actually do it or not. That's amazing. Amazing. How long do you typically follow or how long is a follow-up period for a patient who explants?
We follow our patients for 1 year.
Wow.
So, and they work with our team. Some patients are going to come to our functional team and they're going to be wrapping up in about 4 to 5 months, and that's totally fine. Some people are like, I feel amazing. Life is great. I'm just going to do my physical follow ups with Dr. Whitfield. So they see that team all the way through, like every few months for a year. They work with our team, the functional medicine part, for about 5 to 6 months for detox. And then some people are still not feeling well after that. So they
Mhm.
want to do some retesting and just kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. Sometimes we'll just refer them out for, bioidentical hormones, those pieces. If they
Yep.
already have a functional practitioner they're working with, we'll say, your detox is complete, continue your care with them. We do offer continuum care for people who want that. But a lot of our people have already come in, with a functional practitioner. They're just really utilizing us for that surgical piece. And then they'll go back to working with their other practitioner once we complete that.
I
Yeah.
love that. I think it's so valuable to have a niche like that and to, yes, we can provide you ongoing care, but this is really our specialty. This is what we're good at,
Mhm.
and you're doing a good job of following our protocols.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I think this is so valuable. I would love to hear, before we hop off, your most impactful patient story you've seen. Like, what's the most miraculous thing you've seen with an explant? You could take time to think about it if it's not coming to the front of your mind, but I would love to hear that from you.
My favorite story is one that I've shared before. And we have this patient who was working with Dr. Whitfield. She was a surgical patient about 2 years before I started with Dr. Whitfield. She went through surgery and they did a total toxins test on her. She happened to be living in mold. She
Mm.
started doing remediation on her home at the same time she did her explant. She never did any type of detox program at all with us. And About the time I came in, she was wrapping up kind of her 1 year with Dr. Whitfield, wasn't getting better. And he said, Chelsea, we have this patient. She's been with us a year. She's not getting better. Can you schedule an appointment with her? So I scheduled an appointment and I was like, oh, you've never detoxed. You went through mold, you've gone through explant, you had silicone like leaching into your body. You've never done detox. Like I just couldn't believe it. So we took her through a detox program. And I'm telling you, Ellie, within 1 month, our 1 month follow up, this woman was already starting to transform.
Oh my gosh,
It
that's
was
so beautiful.
unbelievable. She's a nurse. She's a registered nurse. She was 63 years old. She just wanted to have life to give her patients and just be that nurse that she wanted to be in our, last few years before she decides to retire.
Retiring.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
63.
And
That's phenomenal.
totally.
Like a
Yes.
month shift. What a gift
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah.
What a gift that is. What was your detox protocol? Or is it specific to her? Is it a cell core detox? What do you
Yep.
typically do?
So we do cell core, and 1 month was not complete with her. She did end up going through about 4 additional months with us after that, but it just kept getting better and better and better.
100%.
You know,
Yes.
and typically cell core, we do have our own product line as well that we use. Just things that you're probably familiar with detox, B
Yeah.
complex, glutathione, vitamin D, those types of things. So we use a lot of that, and we drove her until the point that she made enough progress to do a repeat toxins test. All of the mold was improving on that toxins test. It was just beautiful to see. Her health markers on her blood work started to reverse, and she started to, like, she has osteoporosis, so she
Mm.
started to see improvement there just in the way that she
Oh
felt
my gosh.
physically. It was amazing. Has an autoimmune condition, like, all these things. She just really started to reverse the symptoms, started to put a lot of things in remission that she had been experiencing for years. And Dr. Whitfield was finally able to start her fat transfer journey, which we could not do in the beginning because she was so sick. So
Yeah.
she's in the process of doing that so that she can feel really good and confident in her body, like she
Yeah.
does, emotionally. She feels good physically now, and she wants that confidence to just feel like her best self in her body. So we're going through fat transfer right now, and I'm just thrilled with her story. She is probably going to be one that I'll remember forever.
I love that. We all have those patients where it's like, I will literally never forget this. And there's always the one thing where it's like, we've never detoxed you. You've done so many things. It's like this light bulb moment for a clinician, but also likely for the patient where that will just resonate with them as well for the rest of their journey. That is so cool. That is so beautiful. And I think, like you said, all those elements of detoxing are so critical. And it's not a one size fits all approach, but having different tools in the kit are so, so, so helpful for getting people over the hump and getting them to the next level of healing. I really appreciate your time today. This was so amazing and so enlightening. And I will link all of the information below for Chelsea's facility that she works at. Like I said, I'm a huge fan. I'm excited to continue to stay in touch, but I appreciate what you guys are doing to help women find intentional healing. I think that's such a gift. And I look forward to hearing what clients of ours or what listeners of ours make their way or connect virtually with you guys to find additional healing. So thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today, Chelsea.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellie. So great to be here.
Oh, so good. Well, everyone, you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next week on Elevated Conversations about Health and Healing.